Hey there, Business for Unicorns podcast listeners. This is Mark, and I'm here to tell you about an awesome free resource on businessforunicorns.com. If you ever find yourself feeling frustrated with your training gym because you know that there are all sorts of things you could work on, but you're not really sure how to prioritize, you don't know what's the most important thing to work on or what order you should be tackling your priorities, well, now is the time to go to businessforunicorns.com, click the button, and fill out our free self-assessment. With the Ultimate Training Gym Owner Report Card, you will gain immediate clarity on just where to be focusing your attention to create more positive impact on your community, to drive more revenue and take-home income, and to do it all with less stress and more peace of mind. So go to businessforunicorns.com, click the button, fill out that free self-assessment, and start building a business and life you love today.
Fitness business nerds, what's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. And today I'm here with a really special guest who I've been hearing about for literally years. And this is the first time we're meeting face to face over the interwebs. And it's Georgie Fear. Hello, Georgie.
Hello, it's great to finally meet you. I'm glad to be here.
It's so good to meet you. And I'm not even joking. I have literally heard your name dozens and dozens of times over the year. Anytime anyone brings up nutrition coaching, being a nutrition badass, your name is at the top of everyone's list. So bravo. You must be doing a lot right.
Well, if you just put all your skill into one area, it can work out pretty well. Notice you've never heard anyone talk about like how good I am at parallel parking or like my basketball dribbling skills are pretty abysmal. So we all got a niche.
Good job staying focused. Well, for those of you who haven't heard of you yet, can you maybe just give us like your 90-second, like who's Georgie Fear and how do you describe your career up until this point?
Sure. I am a registered dietitian and I do nutrition counseling. I've been working with groups and individuals for 17 years now, although I kind of hate to admit that.
Wow.
I started my career working a lot in weight management and sports nutrition. And sort of as I've progressed, I've moved more into the psychological side of eating. So it turns out that now I'm helping people with more issues like binge eating and emotional eating and having a healthy relationship with food, which certainly leads them to better sports performance and weight maintenance. But I think that's just sort of the niche that has created itself around me.
Yeah.
And I love people. I love hearing about why they do what they do and trying to help them find more effective ways to deal with life and nutrition. So Amazing. That is what I do.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love that, and we need more people out there like you because so many of the people I work with on a regular basis have been trying to work nutrition into their gyms, into their facilities for years, and some with more success than others. So I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today because my goal is to ask you all the questions they've been asking me.
Okay,
to ask
good.
you all the things. So, dear audience member, if you own a brick and mortar facility and you've been wanting to fold in some nutrition service into what you do, this is the episode for you. So, let's dive in. I think the first thing I get asked the most is a lot of gym owners, they want to hire a nutrition coach, someone from the outside. They hire either as a contractor or part-time employee to bring some sort of nutrition aspect to their business. And so talk me through, how do they find really good nutrition coaches and make sure that they're a great fit for their culture?
That's a tricky one. That's definitely a tricky one. Definitely I would go to the internet, which is how most of us find anything these days, right? Yep. And the things that I would be looking for, I don't have like a specific website or place that I would recommend. I mean, LinkedIn has its purposes. Facebook has its purposes. Any sort of professional group has its place where you can be connected with people. I'm a big fan of meeting people at conferences or continuing education events because just by walking in the door, there are people that are wanting to better themselves and probably have a little more initiative. And so the things that I think are most important would be to find someone that fits in with the culture that you're trying to create in your business. I mean, your culture is your product. So if you meet somebody and right off the bat, they're making you feel warm and connected and like you want to talk to them and you enjoy talking to them, that's some of the most important skill to being a nutrition coach. If they make you feel judged, that's a problem right off the bat. So, so just personality is tremendous. When I'm looking for coaches to hire for my own business, I don't care what their qualifications are because I can teach them skills. The skills of coaching are very teachable. What I can't teach are the caring and the people that would bend over backwards to find a way to make something work for a client, and the people who really and truly care. Those are the people that I want. So it's kind of like I'm shopping for coaches by heart because I can teach them the skills to be a great coach. So that's what I look for. I actually look for the caring people.
Yeah, well said, Georgie. I think, and that feedback you're getting in that moment when you meet them of how do they make me feel when I first interact with them, that's huge, right? That tells you about the caring. It tells you about the empathy, about their ability to build rapport and trust right away. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Also, when you look at the research about the top 10 reasons how to find a great therapist or coach in your life, basically the summary of that top 10 reasons is just rapport,
and more rapport. Yes.
Right? Like that is all of the reasons to how you find a great coach, a great therapist. Probably is true for trainers too. So if I like being around them and they make me feel good when I'm in their company, I'll want to return, I'll want to open up, I'll want to take risks. So I think you nailed it. I agree. +1. But for people out there who are not you and can't teach them the skills, right? So regular gym owners listening, and they have to hire for rapport and caring, of course, but they also want to make sure that they are going to be a good actual nutrition coach. And so can you just talk a little bit about what kinds of skills might they care about when they're trying to find someone who's a great nutrition coach?
There's a few different sort of training programs that can set people up with various skills. And there's a lot of, just like there's different schools of thought in personal training and fitness, and some people have different approaches. There's certainly different approaches to weight loss coaching. I think there's some excellent certifications out there that can help, like people who have a behavior change certification. I think ACE has one. People that have done the precision nutrition program have a pretty good grasp of skill building and that sort of approach. I think as a business owner, you could ask somebody, like, what's your approach to helping people?
Yeah.
What's your approach? Do you have them count calories? Do you have them log their food? Do you have people use MyFitnessPal and track every macro? Do you not do any of that? Do you have people do this? And so just finding out what is it that you actually go for? Like, what do you try to get people to do in order to get results? How do you hold them accountable to it? How do you follow up with them? That'll give you a good feel. Now, I realize that also kind of makes the business owner have to make a judgment call, because if somebody says, well, I use calorie counting and I have people write down everything they eat and they bring it to me, and you have to then make the judgment call if that's the method that you want to use with your clients. Clearly, I'm biased because I have my own methods.
Sure.
So, for me personally, I would want to see somebody that is not super detailed tracking, because in my experience, people that are like, oh, I'm a macro coach, I give people macro prescriptions and it is their job to eat in accordance with those guidelines. I'm like, next. I'm not interested in people who want to give out macro prescriptions and try and get people to hold to them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's helpful. So
yeah. But I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, so it starts with the conversation, obviously, after the rapport and the caring. The next thing on the list is like, well, demonstrate for me, like, explain to me, how do you get people results? What is your approach? And I think, I'll just tack on to that. I think what I'm hearing you say is also like, and show me that it works, right? Show me that you've had success using this method. And that way, even if I am skeptical of your macro approach, but you can give me 30 testimonials from people who are my avatar at this gym and it has worked for you, clearly you found some way to make it work. So for me, it's like, if you can prove to me that this method has actually gotten you and clients like my clients some results, then we can continue this conversation. Would you agree with that?
I would. It's tricky because a lot of people don't carry around a portfolio of results. Let me show you some of my client testimonials. I have them right here. But I might inquire about what percentage of your clients are not getting results. Because many people will, let's say they adopt a macro counting approach. It will work super well for maybe 1 out of 20 clients.
Yeah.
That means you have 19 people that didn't reach their goals, and one person whose photo you took splashed the before and after on your Instagram and are now using to recruit other people. But like, is it successful for business? It can help. Is that the change you want to make in the world? Not me.
Yeah.
So if you can find something like, so what do you do with clients that are unwilling or unable to track macros? Do you have a backup plan?
Yeah.
How do you adjust? You want to see that the person can customize, because you're not going to hand him carbon copies of the same client, right? You've got some stay-at-home moms who are really pushed for time and prone to putting themselves last. And then you've got some hard-hitting CEOs who are prioritizing work and productivity over balancing their lives with rest and rejuvenation. How do you approach these different people? And so if the person that you're interviewing can discuss how they adapt their methods to different populations, that's going to be the person that will best serve all of your clients, and not just the 120-year-old dude who will track macros.
100%. I think it's a brilliant question, Georgie. Just like, tell me about the people who are not getting results, or, what percentage are they? What are the challenges? What stops you from getting results with those folks? Because I think it's a great way to dig and ask, cool, open your closet, show me the skeletons, right? Show me the parts of this that you're not going to flash on your Instagram that you're still working on. And let's see if we can work on those things together maybe. But I think that's super smart.
We all have them.
Yeah.
Like, we all have clients that are not getting as good of results as somebody else. And 100%. So like, professionally, I think we all should be willing to talk about them, because that's like our next growth opportunity, and like that guides you.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, it's actually kind of a good segue into the next thing I want to talk about, which is actually creating a coaching program, right? And so in many of my conversations with gym owners, they start, when they think about a nutrition program, with thinking about what is the way we're going to get people results. Are we going to count calories? Are we going to do a performance behavior-based thing? Are we going to do some sort of group model? People come together, and oftentimes my conversation is trying to get them to zoom out and think about the experience they're trying to create for people long term. Instead of focusing on just a handful of tools, I try and get them to zoom out and think about, okay, well, what is the full-on experience I'm trying to give people, not just what tools we're going to use in it. So I'm just curious, how do you think about the whole kind of journey of a program? Like, what makes a good nutrition program?
Well, you can have a nutrition program that's centered around group interactions. Mm-hmm. And you can also have a nutrition program that's founded on one-on-one interactions. So drawbacks to both, benefits to both. In terms of like a group atmosphere, sometimes the most important impacts there, just like the rapport with your one counselor or therapist, is there's such a valuable dynamic to having other people in the room to be like, hey, I've had that problem too. Mm-hmm. And so in particular for conditions like binge eating disorder, where there's a fair amount of stigma, I think it's incredibly therapeutic to listen to other people say that they have a problem that you may have felt like you were the only person that had. So I do like a group dynamic, especially for eating disorder related stuff. It can also be helpful to have a group if you have a large enough population to have a niche where people have similar difficulties. So like, let's say if you had educators and you could put them in a group, or healthcare workers and you could put them in a group, then it can be helpful for sharing of tips and stuff that works out. If I had a physical location, I had enough men, I'd put the men in a group together, because I think men face a lot of unique barriers and challenges. So groups can work really nicely to have a cohesive atmosphere that way. One-on-one coaching is always, in my mind, going to be better in a lot of ways, because you can just have so much more customization and tailoring for that person. And then, of course, depending on the format that you want to use, you can have hybrid models where you have certain group elements, like everybody meets on Thursday nights, and then everybody has solo check-ins with the coach during the week, for example. So there's a few ways to bring them together. I think the key is that you don't want to create a finite exception in the person's life. Like those 18 weeks where I did the weight loss challenge in 2022, man, that was a unique one, and it's like this, this little
really
isolated.
Fuels, yeah, it really fuels that all or nothing thinking, or I'm on the horse, I'm off the horse kind of analogy.
Yeah. So I dissuade people from doing things like Biggest Loser challenges or weight loss challenges that are focused on like pounds lost as the sort of key outcome. And I look more for skills gained or behaviors gained consistently. So getting people to practice stuff or feel differently about a particular thing, looking at those sort of progress measures, I think is helpful.
Yeah, I think that's really brilliant. I think it's a great reminder to our listeners that you don't have to just track outcomes, right? Tracking efforts can actually be even more valuable, and rewarding that people showed up, rewarding that people tried, rewarding that people are doing their best, right? Is better than only waiting to reward and celebrate the 5 pounds lost, or that, you fill in the blank. I think that's a great reminder, because all too often I see programs completely structured around some sort of end goal that some people are just, it's not reasonable for them to even get there.
So it's true. Yeah. It's true. Sometimes it's like, people are like drag racing to a finish line, and like half the cars have like 3 wheels or a broken transmission or like a door missing. You're like, wait. Can we work on like all of this stuff before we're like racing to a finish line?
Yeah. I love your overview of, group or one-on-one or hybrid. And I think you're right that there's all of those options have pros and cons. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the role of remote communication. What I primarily mean is like video chat, text chat, because I see that's happening more and more in specifically nutrition coaching programs. I'm wondering, how do you see that fitting into a really great program?
Sure. Well, everything I do is remote. I went all online in 2012. So I've actually been 10 years without like face-to-face working with people. So it can be fantastic. It has some benefits compared to in-person work, chiefly in that if we're talking to somebody face-to-face, we still have the same experience that way. However, it's a lot more convenient for people to be able to like open their laptop and do it where they are instead of having to commute to an office. Second, people are more forthcoming when they're sitting in a comfortable home environment than if they've like been in your waiting room for a little while.
Yeah, for sure.
So it feels less clinical. And then a lot of people I don't do Zoom with, they prefer to just talk on the phone. And so we can just talk on the phone, which can be a little less intimidating again for people. I don't feel like email or text coaching alone is enough. Yeah. I think you can administer lessons to a group via like written communication only. But if you fail, but that's not really coaching. That's like infotainment. Like I can deliver you a book 1 page at a time, and it can be a great book with lots of practical stuff in it. But I don't feel like I'm actually coaching you unless you're telling me the questions and obstacles that are coming up and I'm helping you around those. So I don't love just written interaction. I feel like I need to have some hands-on
actual dialogue. Yeah.
Actual dialogue with somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. And certainly, so many people I'm talking to have been remote this whole time as well. There's still a handful of that I talk to on a regular basis that do have people come in and meet face to face. And I think that can work if you're a local neighborhood gym and people are always nearby and it's convenient. But I love what you said there is that, that there has to be some genuine dialogue for real good coaching to happen. But texting and video things that are kind of on demand or sent without us communicating, they're really good for instructing and teaching, and you need to do a little bit of both often in programs like this. That makes a ton of sense. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say as we know, there's also people that are at different levels of readiness. And oftentimes people who are perhaps not ready for the intensity of a one-on-one interaction, it's helpful just to get quality info. So people who might be like reading your blogs or following you on social media are still gaining benefit from the things that you're saying, because you're not saying the fluff that some people out there are saying, or you might be reinforcing messages of self-kindness and compassion and patience with yourself as you're trying to change. Whereas the rest of the internet may be flooded with messages of no pain, no gain, and you suck because you don't look like this.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, Georgie. Different question. And I get this one all the time as well. That for gym owners out there who do have a nutrition coaching program, and this is true for us at the gym I own, Mark Fisher Fitness, is a lot of our nutrition coaches come up to a barrier, some point where they turn to us and say something like, I love nutrition coaching, but I did not sign up for being people's therapist. Right? I didn't get into this because I want to talk about your childhood trauma. I want to unpack, you get the idea. I won't continue with examples. Sure. You get where I'm going. And it's a hard moment to say, well, that's kind of, my instinct is to say, well, that's the job. That's literally what you signed up for. Let's get you some more skills, right? Let's actually, help you develop your ability to have those kind of conversations. And if you're not comfortable doing that, then, let's find someone else who is. But if we're going to help people with nutrition, let's help them with all the things, not just a few tools. Yeah. And I'm just curious, and again, the conversations I have with at least my staff are more nuanced than that. But it's the kind of thing I'm hearing coaches talk about. Is just like, I have a hard time finding nutrition coaches who are willing and able to deal with emotional eating, or disordered eating. And in some cases, they probably should be referring out when the disorder is acute and outside their scope. But when it is purely just talking about the feelings, oftentimes they they have a hard time with coaches who want to do that kind of work. So what do we do in that situation? Help me out. Yeah.
Yeah. That is the classic thing. Like when you ask people, like, who are your clients that aren't getting results? Everybody's like, the emotional eaters, like rooms full of hands, like the emotional eaters, those people are like, like that's the number one thing that a lot of personal trainers and fitness professionals struggle to help people with, because our education and our practice has been so focused on other things, physical training and reps and sets and styles and, rest periods and all of that. And so it can feel like a bit of a 180 to be dealing with feelings. And you're right that there is a certain amount of people in the population that are not comfortable in getting into deep emotional discussions. It doesn't make them bad people or bad coaches. It just means that they're only going to be effective with people for whom information is their key barrier. They can provide good information. And
they might even be able to provide some decent accountability, right?
Exactly.
And dialogue, right? And that'll be the end of their ability to help if their issues are emotional. So sorry, keep on going. I interrupted.
That's okay. But you can also be supportive, even if you're like I would say for somebody like that, they can get more comfortable in being in the same room with people's emotions, even if they're not comfortable like getting elbows deep in the emotions and helping clients actually with them. For the same fact that like if your client has knee pain, you might be like, can't work with them, can't touch them. Or you may develop the comfort level to be like, I'm not going to play physical therapist, but why don't we do moves that don't elicit any pain? You make sure to tell me if they do, and let's find a good workout for you to do with this knee pain. And you can do a lot of that with nutrition as well. Even if you can't help someone decrease the emotional pain or difficulty in their life, you can treat them as a person who currently has this and look at what can we do, assuming that you're going to have this in your life. And so it's sort of an approach. And I think many fitness professionals, once they're given some of those skills, like what are some phrases I can say to a client, like sample dialogues, like very practical nitty-gritty things that I can say, then they become more comfortable. Because anybody's uncomfortable doing something if we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's brilliant, Georgie. I love the idea of using the analogy of, knee pain. It's like, well, I'm going to make space for us to talk about that and acknowledge there is knee pain going on. And I want to say, also, that's something I can't help reduce for you right now. We need to find a physical therapist for you. But let's talk about what we can do in this session that doesn't elicit that pain. And that same approach can absolutely be applied to emotional moments in nutrition coaching conversations. Say like, hey, I can see that this is emotional for you and I want to make space for that. Do you want to talk about it, right? And even though I might not have the skills to dive in and get rid of it, help them manage that anxiety or that those feelings, I can at the very least make space for it to exist in our work and say, what can we do today that is in line with our plan. What is the next step we can do that I'm comfortable talking about? I think that's so smart.
And being, if you have a relationship with a client where they can come in, be emotional, and you don't put the pressure on yourself to fix it. Yeah. To just be like, let's add something positive into your day. I know you have this that's weighing on your heart right now, but why don't we break a sweat and give yourself something to like add in there that makes you feel really proud? That's very, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't have the ability to develop the skill to at least do that, to be a source of consistency and add positivity in. And then I think more and more people can develop the skills to address emotions in a systematic way that they feel comfortable and confident that they're not doing harm. Because nobody wants to make anyone feel worse, right? Yeah,
of course. Well, maybe let's go there less. That'll be our last topic for this chat. And so if they did want to go the other direction, so path A is make space for the emotion, but don't dive too deep in it. Just wade in the water a little bit, acknowledge it's there, and then move back to more comfortable land where you can move forward in a way that feels good for you as a coach. And maybe even support them in getting help that is outside your scope, right? Help them find a therapist, help them find another, But let's say they want to take path B, which is, okay, let's dive in together. What are some of the more basic skills people could start with in terms of having those conversations about emotional eating?
Some of the best places to start, I think, would be gaining comfort in just having conversations about emotions. Mm-hmm. And because there's a practice there. There's something to get comfortable with. Yep. In just letting somebody tell you how they are and how they're hurting, and maybe asking open-ended questions like, okay, so how this might look in a session would be like, okay, so I see here that you put your, eating ice cream 7 nights a week and sometimes twice a day. Is that because you're hungry, because you just love ice cream? Sometimes is it because you're upset? And so you kind of ask something that pokes at, is there emotional reasons here?
This is an easy role play for me because that's me.
Okay.
That is my crutch.
Okay, so Michael, what patterns have you noticed in terms of what would increase the likelihood of emotional ice cream eating on a given day?
Yeah, for me, it's when I end my day unsatisfied with how it went. I know that I'm tired and cranky and a little annoyed at myself for not accomplishing everything I want to. I make myself feel a little better with ice cream.
Okay. Well, that's
real life. I'm not even pretending. That's real.
And that shows really good awareness, too, because sometimes people are at the spot where they're like, honestly, bad day, ice cream. And it doesn't get any more nuanced than that. But you've already gotten the awareness to be like, okay, there's disappointment, there's dissatisfaction. I can feel more specifically where it is. So I would commend you, as I'm generally genuinely doing, and say that's a really great start. Right. And then what we can do is we can explore options for each of those emotions. So whatever words I can get from somebody dissatisfied, sad, lonely, dejected, whatever it is, I'd write them down. Yep. And I might pick whatever one seems the simplest or easiest to start with, and we would talk about what are some alternative moves that we could make.
Yeah. What else could you do with that dissatisfaction? What else could you do when you're feeling, unfulfilled by your day? What else is available?
Yeah. And so what we'll discover is that there's upstream and downstream ways to deal with each of them. So taking dissatisfaction, the easiest place to begin, and I think a lot of trainers can do this, is talk with your client about alternatives to food. Reminding them food is always there. You're not taking away any option. I think emotionally for a client, that's very important to hear. I'm not telling you don't ever eat ice cream for emotions. Heck, if it's served you well to this point, let's keep it on the roster. But let's add other stuff to the roster so you have a stable of supportive things you can do for yourself. And so we might discover going for a walk, calling a friend, doing a 30-minute foam rolling, help you feel better, whatever it is. So we could write all those down, and I could perhaps give you the homework to practice doing those purposely. Not commenting on how frequently you turn to ice cream, but I want you to start getting some practice in. So can you do one foam rolling session this week and call a friend once when you feel that emotion? And then if you were like, yes, that sounds like something I'm willing to do, I'd say, awesome. Now, next time we talk, I'm going to want to know how it went. So make sure you pay attention to the outcomes. because we want to hold all of these coping mechanisms accountable. So if you call a friend and it leaves you feeling like garbage, pay attention, because like it was unsuccessful. So we want that data. So we can look at the downstream, like what do you do with that disappointment? And then we can also, like the next level of skill might be looking at the upstream. How can we help you not feel so disappointed on such a frequent basis or to such an extent? And so then you get into sort of like another layer of techniques.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Let me see if I can recap for our listeners. Thank you for the fun role play. I probably should do more formally. That's a good example. So the first things first, and I love that you said this first, is the first skill to build if you want to dive into the emotional deep end is to be comfortable talking about emotions, right? And I think so much of that from the coaching's perspective is as a coach to understand having some emotional regulation skills of your own, to recognize when being with an emotional person, what it does to you. Because sometimes it can, if you're a very porous, open person, it can make you emotional, right? It can really impact you in a way that doesn't let you maybe be effective as a coach anymore. So understanding that process is what I heard you say first. Understanding how you can be with emotion yourself is something you have to practice and learn. I love that. The second thing I heard you say is being able to kind of name the emotion, right? So something that you kind of caught in me and pull it out and be able to have a conversation about it. Just having some extra language around how to have a conversation about the emotions that are coming up. And then you labeled some upstream and downstream strategies. And the framing that you used, I thought was so great, was the framing of, I'm just adding to your menu of options here. I'm not saying you can't eat ice cream. I'm not saying you can't eat fried chicken, whatever it is. We just want to add some other options to this menu of ways to cope. And then I love the other direction, which we'll save for another podcast, which is digging back into the disappointment. What's actually going on? What's actually going on there? What's actually happening? What's actually creating this emotion in you in the first place, I think is another way to put it. Is that a decent enough summary?
That was fantastic. Yeah, that was really, really fantastic.
Hooray.
Nice job collecting summary. A+.
Thanks. But I think that it's, for all our listeners out there, I mean, those are things you can learn. You can start practicing those skills with your peers, with other friends in the industry, like really get some practice in. Because I think, you might know this about me, but I teach a course about coaching conversations. And one of the things that I learned, I've said again and again, I probably said on this podcast a million times, is that learning to be in any kind of coach, nutrition coach, business coach, life coach, you name it, is like learning a new language. And you even identified this, so, you demonstrated this so beautifully in this conversation. It's like just learning to say, to hear differently, to respond differently, to ask questions differently, to pull certain things out of what you said and acknowledge them, how you order a conversation. And it's like a whole new language and just requires practice. Yeah. So that's a great model. Anything you would add to what I summarized?
I think that was an excellent summary, and I think it's good fodder for people who are, considering expanding their nutrition offerings in terms of like what do they want to offer. Like if you personally are comfortable moving more in this direction, you may be drawn to it. Like I can't turn this off. Like I love talking with people about how they feel and what they're eating and why, and it's not everybody's cup of tea. But if I was a business owner and I knew this was an opportunity, I'd be all over it. I'd be like, yes, I want to learn those skills. I want to do it personally. If that's not you, then you might want to find somebody who really does enjoy that. And if you have people on your staff already that are showing a proclivity that way, or that you think might, you can talk with them and find out their level of interest in it. But everybody can offer some degree of nutrition support, even if it's only the consistent support and accountability.
Yeah, well said. One final question as we start to wrap up this conversation, which is when do you decide this is out of my scope? When do you decide I need to bring in the big guns, or I need to bring in a friend or another professional? What's that line in the sand look like for you?
I refer out if somebody wants something that I do not provide. So for example, if somebody's like, no, I want a written meal plan, I'm not the person for them to work with. So I'm not going to refer them specifically to another professional. That's just not my style. I'm not going to give you something like that. If somebody is, displaying signs of active and sort of severe bulimia to where they're having like frequent binging and purging episodes, I'm going to refer them to see someone in person, because it tends to be a situation that responds to more intensive treatment. Seeing somebody online once a week just might not be enough. Sure. And also there's a fair amount of medical considerations that, working remotely, I'm not able to put eyes on the whole client. I might not be able to see if they're showing some signs of worsening illness. So if I question somebody, in that regard, where I feel like they might not be improving or might be, getting more severe, then I would refer them to see, I would encourage them to explore inpatient or partial inpatient treatment. And then I often encourage people who are having emotional difficulty to consider adding a mental health professional to their treatment team. You never had too much support, is what I tell people. So, they're going to have things in their toolbox that they can teach you that aren't in mine. And I'm going to have stuff in my toolbox that I can teach you that they might not. Yeah. So it may be worth looking for a therapist. And it is helpful if you have been to therapy yourself to share that with a client, because it always helps normalize things. It's also helpful if you know a little bit about the different types of things that are available. So, for example, some people are like super keen on talk therapy. They want to show up, sit on the couch, and talk for 60 minutes, and that can be really therapeutic in its own way. And then there's some people that are like, I absolutely don't want to do that. I want someone to give me worksheets and exercises that I take and do in the privacy of my own home. And so then I might refer them to search for practitioners with different keywords on their websites. So the more familiar you are with the offerings around you and online, I'll often go to the Psychology Today website with a client on the phone. Let's plug your zip code in here. What's your zip code? Okay, yeah, we got a lot of people here. We've got men, we've got women, we've got some people that specialize in depression, we've got people that specialize in gender issues. Let's see who might be a good fit for you. And I might just leave them with that URL, or I might talk with them through okay, you're going to try and call somebody this weekend. So really try and move them into action in terms of finding someone to work with.
That's a great list, Georgie. And I love that it started with just any place where you have boundaries where I don't do that. I'm just never going to give you a meal plan. I'm never going to do X. Let me find someone who, if that's really what you want, let me find someone who can do that for you. It's just not me. I love that.
That took so much time.
Yeah.
Because you want to make people happy, right?
Of course.
So especially if you have somebody of a high esteem in society or an Olympic athlete who wants something, you're like, maybe I just put it together for this person, give them some special treatment. And then you're like, no, there's a reason I don't do that.
Exactly. The other thing I'll call out that I love that you said, which is if they need some additional support, let's just add it on. It doesn't have to be instead of this, right? Let's just add it on. You can never have too much support. So if you want to keep doing this work together, you can also have a therapist. You can also have go get Reiki once a week, right? You can add any sort of modality you want that's going to be helpful to you. So I love that you can think of that as just addition instead of having, because oftentimes I hear that phrase, it's I have to fire that client because X, Y, and Z. It's well, that's maybe not the case, right? Maybe what we're looking for is just expand their team of supporters, and you can be helpful in that, walking them through the Psychology Today website. You get the idea. Brilliant. I think that's a great list.
Sometimes for people, the cost is an issue. They're like, well, I have my personal trainer or my nutrition coach or a counselor, and I don't want to be seeing 3 people a week, and I don't want to be paying 3 people a week. And I might say, well, right now you and I talk weekly. We could go every other week so that you can free up alternate weeks to talk with your counselor.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's a negotiation, right? It's a collaboration, probably is a better word for it. But yeah. Fantastic. Well, I can ask a million more questions. This has been such a valuable chat, and I'm sure our listeners have taken tons and tons of notes because the conversation has been so practical, and I think there's so many great immediate takeaways. So let me ask you this, Georgie. Well, of course, I'm going to try to have you back at some point because I feel like there's so much more ground for us to cover. But how can people find you? How can people find you to work with you, to learn more about you? Where can they look on the interwebs?
Well, if anybody wants to contact me directly, georgiefear@gmail.com is the best way to get a hold of me. You can learn a little bit more about my company at nutritionloft.com. And my podcast is the Breaking Up with Binge Eating podcast. So if you just want to pick up some tools and tips for how to talk to people about binge eating or emotional eating, great free resource. You can hear how I talk with my clients about it.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you again so much for doing this, Georgie.
Thank
the work
you.
you're doing is so valuable, and I'm sure our listeners have gotten a ton from it. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you loved today's podcast, and forgive me, I want to remind you one more time, if you haven't already done so, head over to businessofunicorns.com, click the button, and get your free self-assessment, the ultimate training gym owner report card. I promise you, you're going to want to dig into this resource and get the support you need, finding crystal clarity on exactly where you need to be focusing to create a life and a business you love.